Hello, everyone. I am Abby Dolliver, Superintendent of Norwich Public Schools, and we are glad to have a guest with us today, and it's Mrs. Siobhan O'Connor, who's the principal of Samuel Huntington Elementary School. So we're going to talk about and brag about and highlight one of our wonderful schools, Samuel Huntington Elementary School. So Mrs. O'Connor, if you could start with talking a little bit about yourself and your background and what brought you to Norwich.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I came to Norwich after being a history teacher. That's where my roots are. It's where my passion was for teaching. And I spent 7 years as a social studies teacher. And then I was tapped to run the alternative programs in the Windsor Public School system. And that was a great opportunity. Certainly learned a lot. And I always love a challenge, and so that's kind of been my history as an educator and as an administrator. After running the alternative programs, I was the Dean of Students at Windsor Public Schools for the high school. It's a high school of about 1,300 students, and so I was in charge in some aspects of all of them, which was a little daunting. But after that, I was really looking for a different experience. I grew up in Windsor. I knew Windsor schools, and so I was looking for a bit of a change, but I was very adamant about wanting a diverse student population. And so in Connecticut, as you know, that's somewhat difficult to find. And so when I was looking for my first building administrator role, I really sought out districts that were diverse. And Norwich had an opportunity for me to join their staff as the assistant principal at Kelly Middle School.
That's right.
And that's where I got my start.
That's right.
And I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to be the principal of a wonderful little school, Samuel Huntington School.
Before we go into Samuel Huntington, maybe you could take a moment to talk about what it was like to be the assistant principal at the middle school and then your move to elementary school.
Absolutely. Being the assistant principal at Kelly Middle School was definitely a great learning experience for me. I got a great relationship with the teachers, and it really gave me an opportunity to get to know Norwich as a whole, since there are so many feeder schools at that time that went to Kelly. It also taught me a lot of what I needed to know in order to be a building principal. And so I think it's very difficult to just jump right from a teacher to a principal of a school. And so that gave me a nice few years between the Dean of Students opportunity that I had in Windsor and the assistant principal in Kelly to kind of get my feet wet and see, was I ready for this? And the students were absolutely wonderful. I still see some of them are at NFA. They come and pick up their sisters and brothers at Huntington. And what I learned from that is the impact that one person can make, because I was only there for a year, right? They don't necessarily have to remember me, but people will come back, oh, Mrs. O'Connor, I missed you. And so it's nice to know that you can make those connections so quickly and have them last so long.
That's great. It's so important for our students.
It is.
And our families.
Absolutely.
So as you know, for sure, because you're a big part of our work, one of our focuses for our district is culture, climate, kind of family engagement. So I know that Huntington School does a lot of celebrating to keep your culture and climate so positive and to have school be a really positive, fun place. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely, yes. One of the great things about Huntington School is their very active PBIS program, and it's in the acronym of Huntington Rocks. So the rocks stand for respect, opportunity, cooperation, kindness, and safety. And you really see that exhibited throughout the day and throughout the year at Huntington School. As I'm very blessed as a building administrator, I don't have to deal with a lot of discipline issues because of the really great climate that was already fostered previous to me going to Huntington. We certainly built upon it, but it was a great climate that already existed. One of the things that we do is every other month we have a town meeting. And at town meeting we learn about what the opportunity for this month was opportunity. And so what does that look like around the building? Because they're kindergartners, first graders, that's a big word. And so what does that really mean? And so we take the opportunity every other month to really look at one of those letters. And so when we looked at opportunity, we have one teacher who generally volunteers to get up in front of the whole school, which is not an easy thing. They get up in front of the whole school and they talk about what does that look like. And they engage in a large conversation about what does that look like in the classroom? What does it look like in the hallways, in the cafeteria, on the playground, and on the bus. And so every time we have a town meeting, we highlight what does that look like and what are we looking for this time.
Can you give an example of what that might look like?
Sure. So in the classroom, for example, opportunity. Well, we have students in grades K through 5 who every day have opportunities to be respectful learners. And so what does that look like when I'm reading? Well, I take advantage of my reading time and I make sure that I'm engaged in my classroom and I do what my teacher is asking of me, because that's going to make me a better student. And so that's the opportunity there. In the cafeteria, you always have the opportunity to be kind, so you can say please and thank you and use your manners. You have the opportunity to help clean up, so they help our custodian.
That's important.
Absolutely. It's because it's part of our school learning environment. So if the cafeteria isn't neat and orderly, then we have a problem, right? And so our students take the opportunity to help out Mr. Chuck, our custodian, and pick up around them and not leave it a mess. Leave it better than how you found it. And that's really what we look at.
That's great. And I'm sure that part of that is so that it carries over into home and into our community, because that's the big link between families and our community for our district.
Right. Yeah, so one of the things that we do to really bring people in during that time and to highlight what we are doing is, a part of that monthly town meeting, we also have the rock stars. And so every classroom teacher and every specials teacher in every grade level nominates a rock star, someone who has really exhibited that trait that we're celebrating.
That's every month?
That's
Yes.
every other month.
Every other month.
Yep. So whenever we have town meeting, we also have our rock star celebration.
That's great.
And our parents come in if their student was nominated, and we really do try to make them understand why this student received this honor. And so the classroom teacher would communicate that. The students really love it. We have a great movie that goes along with it. So their faces come up on the screen and it has their name. And when they see their name, they come up. They don't know because it's a surprise.
That's great.
And so everyone claps for everyone. And we have them all come up and line up, and they get a certificate that says they were a rock star and for what reason they're a rock star. But they also get a pin that says I'm a Huntington rock star. And so you see those pins around the building, and it doesn't matter if they got it last year or the year before, they're still on their book bags or on their jackets. So it definitely is something that means a lot at Huntington School.
That's great. And it grows and grows, which is what we want.
Yeah.
Another important initiative, and one of our district initiatives, of course, is academics. And I know specifically in reading, you have some special programs or links to special programs.
Absolutely. So the first year, my first year at Huntington, which was 3 years ago, if you can believe that already.
3 years.
3 years.
That's great.
We were embarking on the Reader's Workshop model for the entire district, and I felt it was very important for teachers coming from a district that had workshop. They kind of need to see it. It was this mysterious thing, right? Well, we're going to do workshop. What does that really mean? And so I asked if I could send my teachers over to a school that was active already in workshop. And so we were lucky that we kind of got off on a right start, a good fit for workshop, because they got to see it in action. And that mystification ended, and they were able to say, oh, I can do that.
Right.
And so that was our first kind of our first trip down workshop. And after they went, they came back, and they were all from nervous and, oh, I can't do this, to, you know what? We can do this. We already do this, and I know ways that we can do it better, which is a great way to start. So that was 3 years ago, and now we're very much into Reader's Workshop. We've had a large number of our teachers at Huntington School able to attend the Teachers College training from Columbia University, which has definitely moved our practice forward. And so at this point, I really only have 4 or 5 teachers who haven't had that full training, which is wonderful.
That's great. Can you talk just a minute about kind of the idea of Reader's Workshop so that people would understand the choice part of it? I think to me that's the best part of it.
It is. It's the most powerful part of the workshop model. So in the Teachers College Reading Workshop model, students are paired with Just Right books. We do a lot around what is a Just Right book. And so traditional curriculum models were that everyone was reading the same book. Well, that's not really indicative of all students and where they are and where they need to be. Some students need much harder texts, and some students still need a little bit more work in the lower level text, which is fine because we're all working where we need to work at our own pace. So as a part of the Reader's Workshop model, the teacher does a mini lesson where they talk about a reading strategy that can be applied to any book. It could be how to close read, how to pay attention to the words on the page, thinking deeper about your text. So depending on the grade level and the unit they're in, they have these mini lessons that last about 10 minutes. And then after that, what they will do is the students will go, and you'll see them go, off you go,
Yeah.
and they go into their reading spots in their Just Right books, and they're applying the skills that they need in order to be a better learner. But it's very individualized, and that's really, I think, the power behind that workshop model.
When, I've read some of the books just because they're so interesting, making me think when years ago, even for my kids or me way long ago, it was read this chapter, answer these questions, write the vocabulary, very dry.
Right.
But now when you can look at topic areas of interest, so if you're interested in science or biography or history, whatever you're interested in, you can always find a book at your level. If not, we find one.
Right, absolutely. We
that-
go to classroom and find that book.
So there's so many books in our district and at Huntington that students can choose from. It excites them, I think.
Absolutely. My own children went through the workshop model in elementary school, and that was the one thing that they always would talk about because they had a few years in the traditional anthology curriculum, and they were always bored and they didn't like to read. And I have a teenage boy, a preteen boy, who will say that very adamantly. But once he was in workshop, he could find a book that suited his likes and dislikes and things that would challenge him. And I think that that's very important. No matter where a student is performing, they always need to be continually challenged so they get to where we want them to be and where the books are more interesting, right? So that's a very big piece. And you see the students, getting a book in the library that's meaningful to them. They're much more thoughtful in choosing a book, and that's creating lifelong habits. So when they go to a bookstore, when they go to the public library, they know how to choose a book that is just right for them, and it's a great life skill that they're learning.
The more you read, the more you learn.
Right.
And the more excited, I think, students become about learning.
Right.
If you're reading what's interesting, it's like that for us as adults also.
Absolutely. We've all had those books that we had to read, but we really try to make sure that they have that opportunity in every unit and every time that they can go shop. And they shop for books. We don't give them a book. They go and they go into the bins, and they know their level, and they go shopping.
That's great.
And that's exactly how we want it in life.
That's perfect. And then being able to take them home also
Absolutely.
makes a big difference.
It does.
So you talked a little bit about students are at different levels. Can you talk a little bit about how you enrich students at various levels?
Sure, absolutely. So we do a lot of work within the classroom to enrich all students, and so our teachers do a lot of PD around how do we, very teacher speak word, but differentiate. So how do we provide challenge wherever the student is currently performing? And we have students who are performing well above grade level expectations, and we don't want them to stagnate or stop learning or slow down their learning. So we make a very concerted effort at Huntington School to make sure that everyone has challenging materials in front of them. And so we have groups within the classroom that provide enrichment activities, even little things like project-based learning. So within math, if they've finished their work, they have a project-based learning folder, and they go in and they pull out little activities that really extend their thinking and move into the problem-solving realm. And that's an easy one that we do, and we can find that in almost every grade level. What you also have is we have specific clubs within our school that are targeted for those students who are already performing above grade level. The one that's currently running is in conjunction with the New England Science and Sailing Center, and it's a STEM club.
That's great.
Yeah, so we have 15 students who are above grade level expectations who really need that added benefit. And so they work with the person from the New England Science and Sailing Center once a week to do things like make penny boats, or they were
great.
making wind turbines. And so they're also having to apply that science knowledge that they might not necessarily get in the elementary curriculum because that's already where they're performing. So we do that. We also do the stock market game, which also Mahan School does that as well, and several other elementary schools. And so students really have to engage in what is the stock market. They know more than we do. It's so funny. But they pick their stocks, they have a portfolio, and they compete with fellow students around Norwich, but then also globally on the stock market game. So it's another enrichment opportunity we have. And the last one we're actually going to offer for the first time this year through the foundation grant is the National Geography Bee.
That's great.
Yeah, and so what's going to happen with that is students are going to train for the bee, just like a spelling bee, but this is a geography bee. And they're also going to serve as ambassadors in the winter when we have the North America map that is coming to Huntington School.
That is great.
It takes up the entire gymnasium. There are events that the students are actually going to design about how would the public, anyone coming into Huntington School and seeing this map, what are good activities that we could do to get them really excited about geography?
So does the map visit and leave?
The map
That's what
visits and
happens.
leaves, yes.
Yes.
So it's there for about 2 weeks.
That's great.
And it will take up our entire gym. And there are PE activities that go along with that. And so we're really going to have the students lead that charge of what makes geography exciting. Why do you like geography so much? And why are you participating in that? And hopefully at the end of the night, people will be a little more excited about something
That's
that
great.
sometimes is boring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit also about the Second Step program that you have at Huntington School.
Sure. So the Second Steps program isn't something that's really new to Norwich. It's been around for quite a while. But we really felt that 2 reasons we decided to implement Second Step. The first was our social worker and our psychologist really wanted to be more of a part of our school, which is wonderful. They wanted to be part of our teaching community. And they came to me about Second Step because they found that there are some skills that students have and some skills that students don't, and they really felt that this addressed the needs of every learner. So the Second Step program is what we would call a Tier 1 program. So it's designed for everyone to really hone in on skills for learning. So how do I focus my attention, especially when I'm bored? How can I figure out how to get re-engaged? It talks about emotion management. I mean, these are kindergarten through 5th grade. They are all going to have a bad day. And so this program also teaches them skills on how to deal with that and how do I know that it's happening, and then how do I make a good choice? And so it goes along very
When
well
they
with
get
our
frustrated,
when they
if
get
works-
frustrated.
If they don't feel like working or they're not complying for whatever reason,
Right.
builds their skill.
It builds their skill in that area so we don't have those issues. It also does a lot of work with empathy. And how can I put myself in someone else's shoes when something is going on? So when your peer is having a bad day, how do I react to that? Because it's probably also going to impact me. And so how can I really figure out what they might be thinking and feeling, and how can I help regulate what I'm thinking and feeling in reaction? And so those are all skills that every student can really benefit from. And so it's been a great learning opportunity for my social worker and my psychologist, and they get to really know all of the students more so than they did before, but then also provide this added benefit of a skill building activity.
And I'm sure that going home and dealing with siblings and parents and cousins and friends in the neighborhood, that some of these skills can be used there.
Absolutely.
And that's what we hope.
We certainly hope that, right? With all skills that we're teaching
Right.
them in school. So we hope that there's that transference into real life because we all have areas where we can grow, and it's nice that our entire community is really behind the learning.
And to make students excited about it is the best part.
Yeah.
Speaking of community and having things grow,
Sure.
I know there are a lot of links to the community at Huntington School. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how we bring the community in and how we reach out to the community.
Sure, this is a great month to have that question because Thanksgiving is a very important time. So I'll also maybe talk about the Rocks parties because it
That'd be
has a
great.
nice link. So for this month, we're concentrating on opportunity, which is a wonderful thing to be looking at the time of Thanksgiving. So in this particular cycle, we're actually having our Rocks party about giving back to the community. And so I'll go into a little bit about Rocks Party, then
Okay.
I'll talk about the Thanksgiving
Good.
theme. So every other month when we're not having town meeting, we have a Rocks Party. And that is a celebration of students who have achieved getting their 5 tickets. So the respect, opportunity, cooperation, kindness, and safety that I talked about earlier, there's Rocks tickets. And those are like gold at Huntington School. So if a student follows one of those acronyms, they actually get a blue ticket. And
So people
anyone.
can just give them out random,
Right.
not,
So
not so random.
Right,
but
so someone
4
helps
things.
Mr. Chuck,
Right.
the custodian. Oh,
Right.
well, that was very respectful. That was very kind. And they would get a blue ticket from either Mr. Chuck or the teacher who was watching. But it's really catching people being good, making
great.
the right choices. And if they have those 5 tickets, they get to go to the every other month Rocks Party. And what that is for this month in Thanksgiving is they are making crafts for local elderly facilities.
That's
so convalescent
wonderful.
homes. There's an Alzheimer's facility who asked us to make some things. So every single grade level, K through 5, is making their own special craft to donate for those people who asked for them. And so we do that. But we also do a food drive. So part of the Rocks party is everyone bringing in 1 can of food.
I did notice some canned goods in your office, so
Yes,
that's the start of that,
That's
right?
the start of that. And last year we filled the stage, and we donate those to local agencies in Norwich that really have asked for some help. So that's a great way to have students really realize that there are others, and we need to help the people in Norwich, and they are so excited when we fill that stage. We actually send a count around to all of the smart boards in the school when our 5th graders help count up all the goods, and so they look for the running total throughout the day.
That is great.
So that's going to be great.
It's so important, especially Thanksgiving is one of my favorite times because it is our time to give thanks for what we have, but also to help others. And what a life's lesson for all of us, adults and students, to think about that.
Yes.
And
be excited about that. I mean, that's not something that you would necessarily think of kids today, right? Being really excited about helping. But when they found out that they got to make crafts for the local facilities, they were very excited about that process.
I know that there is a facility across the street just about from Huntington.
Yep.
Is there ever any visits either way, or?
We haven't organized visits necessarily, but we really do try to reach out and ask them what they would like. And
That's
one of the
great.
things they talk about is that not everyone has a visitor, but and not everyone has someone who would bring something special for them. And so that's when we agreed to make the crafts, and we would take them over and kind of present them, and people were very excited about that.
That is really great. What about what the staff donates for this type of thing?
One of the things about Huntington that really points to the culture and climate of Huntington School is that whenever there's a child in need at Huntington or that someone knows about, our staff continually donates. We had one student who came in from a foreign country this year and really had just what he had on his back. And so immediately, once the staff found out, it was, what do they need? And it was dressers and bathroom goods and sneakers for gym. Within a week, all of those things had already been donated and delivered to the families. And, we have so much.
Right.
And sometimes we forget that. And at Huntington School, it's whatever someone needs, people are really willing to provide. We also have a clothing closet that we maintain. So any student who may need a uniform or a book bag or a winter coat, those are also available to them.
That's great that we are able to, in a kind way, and with no embarrassment, provide these things in a kind of quiet, kind manner,
Right.
which is what we want to do.
Absolutely, because it's just about giving. It's not about the notoriety of giving, right?
No,
It's
that's the biggest lesson.
absolutely, yeah.
I know that you received a special grant for technology, and it's really making a difference at your school, at Huntington School, at our school. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. For the past 4 years, we've actually written to the Southeastern Foundation, and we've received grants for over now 100 iPads for Huntington School.
Fabulous.
It is, it's such a great opportunity for learning. There are so many new technology, new apps that are out there for students that really get them engaged, more so than any teacher standing up in front of them sometimes. One of the things that we've definitely used this year is Prodigy. It's a new math application that students, they think they're playing a game, but really they're learning all their Common Core math skills, and it gives us information on what they know and what they don't know. So that's been a very nice app in the area of mathematics. We also have Raz Kids, which is a reading program, and that provides online leveled text, so that Just Right level we spoke about earlier. In that application allows us to match students to Just Right level. So even if they don't forget their book bag at home, you always have Raz Kids that you can go on and you can read books on there. They have comprehension questions, and it also reads to them. So students who really need that book read out loud also have the opportunity.
That's so special to me, to either read to someone or have someone read. There's just something about it, that interaction, that is very, very special.
It is.
And meaningful.
Yes, and it encourages people to read more, I think, because they have that connection.
Do either of those apps that you mentioned, Raz Kids, or the other one, link to home in any way?
Yes.
So how does that foster our homeschool
That's a great
relationship?
question. Yeah, so both of those programs actually have online logins for parents. So parents can go on to either one of those and see how their student is progressing. And they can also have a very quick email link to their teacher. So after any student does either one of those programs, the teacher gets an update email that your student was on Prodigy or your student was on Raz Kids, and they can go in and look at, say, oh, I really see that my student is struggling in this, and then they can have a conversation about what they might be doing to help the student in that area. So it keeps everyone on the same page, and in the days of technology, it's just amazing how connected we can actually be.
And people talk pros and cons about too much technology, but if it's really planned and purposeful,
Right.
and links families with us and our students in that circle, it's really worthwhile.
Yes, absolutely. It can be very enriching. Absolutely.
So before we move to some of the activities that you have, talk a little bit about the National Social Studies Convention.
Sure. Last year, two of our teachers, Mrs. Debbie Lehman, who was in 5th grade, and Dr. Jean Engel, who was our math instructional specialist, went to the National Social Studies Convention and presented their projects on Norwich history. And grade 5 at Huntington always does a large unit at the end of the year where they examine the history of Norwich. They take a walking tour and they go to the cemetery, they go to the town green.
We have quite a history in Norwich.
It's a wealth of information for social studies. And they actually use those apps from that grant and had students make digital portfolios of their historical journey. And they were asked to come to the National Social Studies Convention to present how they integrate technology into social studies to increase student engagement. They were rock stars. They did not anticipate that, but people were emailing them and asking them, oh, how did you do this? How did you do that? And if you ever know Debbie Lehman, she'll be the first one to say, I don't know anything about technology. But it was nice to see that anyone can learn that skill and really be effective in teaching with them.
Do we continue that now? Are we continuing that
Yes,
program?
we are continuing that program. Mrs. Lehman has moved to a 2nd grade, but her former colleagues definitely are still interested in doing that. And I believe they have been asked to present at another conference as well. So they will be going to another national
really
conference.
Wonderful.
Yes.
It's great. It's all the good work that goes on.
Right.
I know it's quite a team effort, and
Yes.
we love when our teams work well together, and I know they do at Huntington.
Yes.
I didn't know if maybe you wanted to highlight, you talked about the rock parties,
Yep.
any of the other events that might be occurring?
Sure. So we had our Fall into Learning event at the beginning of the school year. That was in early October, and that was to highlight all of the curriculum that we do. So we had little activities for every student in K through 5 for them to do while their parents were learning about our curriculum. So we did that. Our biggest event of the year is always Family Fun Night, and that coincides with Field Day. So the night of Field Day, we have those activities still up and running for children and parents to enjoy, but then we also invite everyone in for a cookout.
That is fun.
And that is an event that has grown exponentially every year. The first year we had about 300. Last year we had about 350 people attend. And it's a great way to celebrate all the good work that people do throughout the year and to kick the next year off with a bang. And everyone really has fun and just enjoys themselves. And after working so hard in a school year, it's really important to step back and celebrate.
It's great. And I know that regularly, within classrooms, because I visited, there are many celebrations for student achievement or good behavior or whatever. It's a very pleasant and positive school.
Yes.
And we really are thankful that you are leading that charge. And I thank you for being on the show today. Anything else you want to add?
No, I just want to thank you for having me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a part of the Norwich Public School System.
All right.
Thank you.
Probably a couple.